So here we are, the final week. Monumental effort in the games leading up to this to get Carlton to a point where Step 4 status was almost within their grasp. But 2 more really difficult games against quality opposition, nothing was taken for granted. Were they going to do it?
What we did know, though, was having that game was that if we won both games, we weren't even going to think about playoffs.
No, because of the other teams playing each other. That's right.
So we were actually in the box seats. Obviously, that's easier to say than actually to go to Ponte, which is a difficult place at the best of times. We seem to have got the hang of it recently, but at that time, you would know previously that your previous visit,
we'd lost 4-2.
4-2.
And it could have been 10.
So Tuesday night, Pontefract, and once again, a great away following.
Yeah, great away following. Goal down early on.
We started a bit like we did at Lincoln. We just didn't look.
No.
We didn't look up for it. You know, it was, I don't know if it was the shock of the Lincoln performance, but we were nowhere near the levels, were we?
They went a goal up. It was looking like it's going to be a difficult night. And then half an hour in, Niall Davey went down with what looked a really nasty injury.
Yeah. And there was a big stoppage, and eventually an ambulance called, and the game was abandoned.
40 minutes in or so. That was that.
And that was it. Which then led to, obviously, the fixture having to be rearranged prior to the Saturday being the last day of the season.
So there was only one day available, and it was going to be the Thursday. So off we went back to Ponte again on the Thursday.
On the Thursday.
And we made a couple of changes to the side that day, didn't we, Mal?
We did. And what was interesting, just as an aside, is that I went in the car, travelled to the game with Dan, and we parked up next to their assistant manager, who is actually now their manager. And he exchanged a couple of pleasantries to begin with before launching into, basically, we'd have beaten you the other night and it's just not on, and et cetera, et cetera. So, they were not happy, were they? And their supporters made it quite obvious to any of us that were prepared to listen that they weren't happy about it.
Well, I mean, he might be right. They might have beaten us. Then again, they might not have. But ultimately, the game got abandoned, so you just got to go on with it. It wasn't like it was the last minute and it got abandoned. There was still an hour to go, and it was only 1-0.
But as you said, going back to what you said, Alan, we had a couple of changes to the team.
Yeah, Trokey was either not available or whatever, and so we had a new striker who had been signed on for the season, but hadn't actually played for us because we've been playing elsewhere and at a different level. So Nat's brother Kieran, who had been scoring goals for fun. Was he at Hallam in those days? I think he was, wasn't he? Or Retford, one of those.
I think Hallam.
But we started off much better.
We did. We started off excellent, and we took the lead.
Niall Hilton.
Yeah.
Great goal. 1-0 up.
Now they had and still have, a long throw, their captain's long throw, which could come into your 6-yard box from the halfway line. And that was a weapon that teams struggled with. And at that time, their team then, I seem to recall, was slightly more experienced, but also bigger, and there were more targets to aim at. And they equalised just before half time.
From one of those.
Like a goal-mouth scramble, but they equalised. So we went in 1-1, which, as we say, was better than the performance on the Tuesday night.
So second half, my recollection, it was quite even, but they're a decent side, Ponte, and they were putting us under a bit of pressure as the half wore on.
And then they've got the long throw.
So they get a second goal.
And the long throw comes in, and unfortunately for us, Dino, who's an absolute rock and our main resource, if you like, for heading those things away, the flight of the ball, it kind of kisses his head and goes into the top of the net. And we're 2-1 down.
And that was only with about, 17, 18 minutes left, something like that. Maybe
Probably
even a bit
less.
less. Maybe,
Probably
maybe
less.
a bit less, 70, 76 maybe. Which kind of goes back to the point about the Tuesday, that they were going to have to hang on to their lead for an hour if they were going to win that game. They couldn't hang on to that one for more than 10 minutes.
No.
Brilliant goal for the equaliser.
Absolutely fantastic.
Great move.
Nat to Lewis Duro, was
Duro, and then Lewis Duro gets down the left, puts in a fantastic whipped-in near-post cross, and Kieran Watson reacts ahead of everyone else, steers the ball out. A proper goal scorer.
Yeah, it was a proper goal scorer.
Proper goal. So it's 2-2, 5 minutes to go. Now, we knew if we got a third goal, then everything was in our own hands for the Dunston game. But we also knew, as if we got a point, then as long as we beat Dunston, if Lincoln were to lose at Concert, and Concert also needed to win to avoid relegation, then we'd climb above Lincoln and get fourth bottom spot. So we knew at the game at Ponty that even a point, whilst it wasn't going to be enough to get us out of the bottom four, might be crucial at the end of the season.
Yeah. And I suppose we looked at Shildon's fixture at Grimsby Borough and Shildon's run of form and thought they're not going to win there, which gave you even more confidence.
Yeah, so we've got Dunston at home on the Saturday. Dunston have to win to have any chance of getting into the top five.
Yeah.
And as it turned out, if they had won, they would have got into the top five because Stocksbridge didn't get whatever result they needed that day.
That's right, yeah.
We had to win to guarantee that we wouldn't finish in the bottom two. And if we'd drawn or lost and Shildon had won at Grimsby, then that meant we were relegated, end of. So the only result that we could get to guarantee that we weren't going to be relegated at 5 o'clock was a win against Dunston. Not much to ask for.
No, not much to ask for at all. Yeah, a great start. The best start possible. Alan and I would probably differ on our spreadsheets as to who scored the goal, because for me it was an own goal all day long. However, without Kieran being there, then it probably doesn't go in.
Kieran Watson, 2 games, 2 goals. That's the kind of goal scoring record anyone wants.
So that gave us the perfect start.
5 minutes in, that. 5 minutes in.
So, and I, like a lot of people, would be looking at football web pages, looking at the updates, what was happening, with Shildon, what was happening with Lincoln. It was a much better app in those days, so I didn't have to wait for all the ads to. But as I say, so you're refreshing, and there was a fantastic saving tackle by Sarge, when they got in the first half to protect that lead. And as we all knew, that 1-0 was so precarious because, a goal against us, against a side chasing the playoffs, could have been disaster. And of course, looking at the football web pages, Shildon were 2 up at Grimsby.
Yeah, I mean, they went 3 up in the end, didn't they?
They went 3 up.
Yeah.
So we get into half time, 1 to the good. But I mean, I sort of said the other day, that I don't think, in hindsight, I've enjoyed a game so much whilst hating every minute of it because of the fear of what could happen.
The second 45 minutes just went on forever. It was just horrible. It was really horrible. We had a load of fans behind the goal down there. at one point in time, I think it was Mark Steggles came around trying to sell raffle tickets, and I just said, "What are you talking about? You know, I can't take my eyes off this game." Then, of course, you know, early in the second half,
we give a penalty away.
yeah, a penalty away, yeah. And it's Mikey Emery who is the hero that day. Fantastic save. Diving to his right, if I remember right. Yeah.
And that actually, you know, could have changed everything.
Oh, if
Had
they score that
equalised.
penalty, they win the game.
Yeah.
Absolutely certain. And we go down.
And so the game carries on, and like Alan says, the longest 45 minutes ever. And it just was a case of refreshing football web pages. Concert were doing their bit, but Shildon had scored again. And so, you know, a goal conceded, we would be relegated.
Yeah.
We would be second bottom. It was that tight.
And if we hang on to the win, we'll finish fourth bottom. So, and then it was just awful until the 89th minute. Juro throw. Hilton run, cross. That Watson, roof of the net.
And obviously, what I can see from the side, I can see everybody behind the goal, and it's absolute pandemonium. But as I stood there and the cross come across, you know, I'm not getting the same angle, but I'm just thinking, Nat, just put that in the back of the net. And when he put that in the back of the net, then all of that angst, all of that worry just dissipated. It just went.
It was. Everyone's there. We're all stood there. As it comes across to him, you know, he could score, and then he does score. And it was just an explosion of joy and relief.
Yeah.
Relief, because we knew then we'd won the game.
Yeah.
It was 1 minute to go. We weren't going to let in 2 goals. It was just fantastic. What was relief for you on the final day when we beat Dunston? And we were fairly certain amongst ourselves that we were going to get that reprieve because we knew that.
Me and Mark went back to my bar and got hammered.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want that R
on
your CV. You know, I had it once at Hucknall and I never wanted it again. And it don't matter what the R is there for, if it's somebody else's fault or it's your fault, it's still on your CV.
But the strangest thing about the day and the result against Dunston was that of all of the other teams in the league, they were the only side that we did the double over all season.
Yeah. The only side. And Shildon did win at Grimsby. I think it was 3-2 in the end, wasn't it? But they won.
And Shildon went down with 40 points.
Yes, because we finished on 42.
Yeah.
Went down with 40 points from...
40 points.
From, 38 games. I mean, that's criminal.
It is criminal.
Yeah. And Lincoln lost at Concert, so we knew we'd move up to fourth bottom. And we also knew that North Shields were in difficulties with the ground grading. So there was a reasonable chance we wouldn't even have to play the promotion relegation playoff game because we'd get a reprieve, which turned out to be the case. Although I think, going into a one-off decider on the back of 6 wins out of 10, I think we'd have been favourites for that game anyway. Myself.
Yeah.
But we didn't have to play it.
I was going to say, I think as we saw, because a lot of us went to the Lincoln Avro game, didn't we? And if you looked at that, I know that Lincoln had not had the form that we'd had, but Avro, as a side that had finished second in their league, you know, were certainly up for it, weren't they? So it was better not to have the playoff.
I mean, it was. I think over the 2 years that those playoffs ran, more of the Step 5 clubs won the games. And remember as well, they're always away from home than the Step 4 clubs do. So that's a fair point. But I do think of all of the teams who would finish third or fourth bottom, there won't be many who would go into it with playoff form. And that was ours, 19 points from the last 10 games. So I'd have hoped that we'd have turned up for that particular game, but I am genuinely pleased we didn't have to play it, as I'm sure everyone at the club is.
Yeah. And as you say, we had 23 points from 28 games. So to take 19 from 10.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the form we carried into the next season, but that's a different story.